verify or suffer. Now, this is something I talked about originally 3 years ago, almost to the day. There's a blog post and video up at my website, shadowanyone.com, about this. But when you're a private investigator, when you're any kind of investigator, you have to verify the information before you give it to a client, or in the case I'm going to talk to you about today, take action upon it, very detrimental action. I'm Larry Kaye with shadowanyone.com, and I'm sorry, this is just, I have to say it again. It has to be a reminder. It has to be out there. So we're going to talk about it. First of all, the information I'm going to share with you today it's pretty one-sided. It comes from a federal lawsuit that was filed against a major metropolitan law enforcement agency, a large police department. You'd know the name if I said it. And it's not classified or secret, but it doesn't matter who it is, because it could be any big department, it could be any little department, it could be any private sector, it could be you. If you're not careful, how is the information you report back to your client going to be used? So here's what we got going on. The police are looking to take into custody a man in connection with ecstasy. Now, how much they cared about him or wanted him or what he was doing, I don't know. I do know, according to the lawsuit, they used well over a dozen officers to raid this home, and that's what happened, is they raided a home looking for this guy. The problem is, the guy wasn't there. Family was there, celebrating a birthday party for a 4-year-old kid. Now, initially you might think, okay, that's just bad luck, because Uncle Bernie or whoever was not there for the birthday party. That's who they were going for. It is so much worse than that. The guy they were looking for had not lived there, according to the lawsuit, according to people suing, for 5 years. When they finally got a look at the search warrant, they look at the name on it, they look at what's going on, and this guy has not lived here forever. And they're saying that 5 years the guy hasn't lived there. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not, maybe it was less than that. What if it was only a year the guy was gone? But the police raided the house based on a bad address that it looks like it wasn't verified. Now, I have to be very careful here. I am not armchair quarterbacking the police department on this. Man, if you've not been out there in the field working, and I'm talking for the law enforcement guys, for my brothers and sisters in security, loss prevention, fugitive recovery, process serving, if you've not been out in the world doing things, then you can't sit behind your computer dusting corn chip crumbs off of your chest going, they should have known better. But if you have been out in the real world doing things, you should know better, that's for sure. And don't let this happen to you. I'm using this as a cautionary tale for you. I'm not using it to bash on the police at all. Because let's face it, if it comes out that things are as they are listed in the lawsuit, they're going to pay for it. It's pretty bad. Of course, when you're going after drug people and a lot of bad guys, you have to come in with overwhelming force, or the appearance of overwhelming force. You've got to come at them with enough that they know it's not worth fighting. So sometimes you'll see this on the street where 2 or 3 cruisers, 6 officers will be coming at a guy at one time. Wow, it looks terrible. Why are they using so many officers against this one guy? And it's because, and I'm talking about a specific incident I'm thinking about that I was there to witness firsthand. The guy had a firearm on him. The guy had a sidearm, and they approached him quickly, overwhelmingly, and the guy just knew, there's nothing. And he raised his hands. The police did not push him down. They did not push him to the ground. They did not manhandle him. They did nothing. Nothing on that suspect touched anything. His feet were standing on the ground. At one point, his hands were touching a wall. That was it. He was not he just raised his hands and gave up. Why? Because he was facing overwhelming force. There was nothing else for him to do. Everybody walked away from that safe and sound, including the bad guy, who for a fact 100% was carrying a sidearm at the time. So the officers, according to this lawsuit, come into this house hard and fast, loud, shouting expletives, wanting everybody to get their hands up, get your hands up. I'm not at all surprised by that. I'm not offended by that. Now, I'm not one to use foul language or expletives. I'm not saying that I haven't in the past, and I'm not saying if I was taking somebody into custody, I wouldn't even still today. But I just don't cuss. I just don't. That's not who I am. However, I heard an interesting explanation once for why there's so much cursing in certain environments, and especially in these high conflict environments. And the idea was the person explained it. He says it's like gorillas, these big, strong silverbacks who pound their chest and thump their chest at each other in a display of dominance. If they only had the actual use of violence against each other, it would be a terrible thing for the entire community and for both silverbacks involved. But the chest thumping allows them to convey their message that I'm not fooling around, you better back down. So, in a high conflict environment, you're trying to take somebody into custody, expletives may be, I would say, in my view, acceptable and maybe even beneficial, and allow you to increase the level of officer and suspect safety. Let's face it, if you're speaking the language of the suspect you're arresting, and I don't mean foreign language, domestic language, whatever, I'm talking about being able to speak to them in words they understand the meaning of clearly, said to them in a way they would say it if they were trying to display dominance. They understand that, and there's a better chance of getting compliance just with your words. Now, it looks exceptionally bad, though, if you come into a 4-year-old's birthday party where no one is doing anything wrong and you're using that kind of language and the guns are drawn. You've hit the wrong house. That, now it seems just certainly egregious. You don't need that kind of language at a children's birthday party. And you don't need to draw your weapons at a children's birthday party either. There was a 7-year-old sister to the 4-year-old birthday boy. She reportedly thought she was going to get shot. And I'm not surprised. The people who were there used words like terrifying and horrible to describe the experience. Not surprising at all. Now, once they got into the residence, they actually also flipped over mattresses, went through drawers. It's not like they realized instantly they had the wrong place. They began looking for apparently weapons or contraband before they even realized the suspect is not there. Again, I'm not armchair quarterbacking. You have to secure the scene from a safety point of view, make sure there's no weapons that are readily and easily accessible. I don't know what happened in that house. All I know is what the people inside that house are now reporting, and nobody yet has the police side because they don't comment on pending litigation, right? So we only have one side of the story, but it's pretty credible. In the end, the police left with no arrest, nobody in custody, no charges being filed, and no dope. They didn't even find any dope. Pretty bad that they hit the wrong house. What happened in the house, if the suspect had been there, I don't think would be a big deal or up for debate at all. But they hit the wrong house because they did not verify the address. I'm inclined to side with law enforcement on almost everything, including this happens. You know, you make 100 raids or 1,000 raids, or over a course of time, one bad one's going to slip in. I'll give you that. That's not what happened here. Much less than a year before this raid on their bad address happened, the city settled a lawsuit for a raid on a bad address. That means if the city gave extra training or extra warnings or set in place extra precautions right after they lost that other lawsuit, and you can say settle or loss or whatever, but it was $2.5 million. So there's some indication that they knew they did something wrong or handled things inappropriately. But if after that settlement they did any kind of rudimentary retraining or reminders or sent an email about the precautions you have to take before a raid, that means the police department didn't even make it a full year before doing the exact same thing again. Now, are there mitigating circumstances? Are there things that make you go, well, I don't know? Look, it's the same lawyer as the last lawsuit. So you can argue, well, this is what this guy does, is he finds these little mistakes the police make and he trumps them up into these big deals, and the city just pays it to make it go away because it's too embarrassing the way he's telling the story and people won't understand our side. Okay, if you're pro law enforcement, you want to give it that spin, give it that spin. Here's what you and I need to take away from it. Verify the information you get, verify the information from your investigation before you report it to a client who may very well use it to take dramatic action. 3 years ago, almost to the day, I said these same things. I wasn't as adamant. I didn't put my foot down as much. it's important for you to know, let's you and me not make this mistake. And look, the fact that you're watching this and the fact that you watched this far into it tells me you're somebody inclined to be more concerned about the details, to be more concerned about the professionalism of it. Not that the police weren't professional about it, not that they weren't concerned about the details, but somebody didn't verify that address that was, according to the lawsuit, 5 years old. 5 years old. What if the plaintiffs, what if the family that was in that house is totally exaggerating? What if they're exaggerating it twice as bad as it actually was? That means the address was still 2.5 years old. What if they're completely bananas, exaggerating everything, making it sound 5 times worse than it actually is? That means that address was still 1 year old. A year old. That guy hadn't been there, and nobody verified it. All right, this genuinely doesn't apply to you because you've invested just this much time to hear a story that I can't stop going on about and ranting about. So good for you. And I think that means that you're going to honor what I just preach every week as I close out these videos, and that is to do the right thing, even if it's the hard thing. Oh yeah, one more thing. Verifying an address is not a hard thing. It's part of our jobs. So, do the right thing. Okay, at this point, you may have some very strong feelings about this police raid, and that's good. Anger is an appropriate response to injustice. Now, you have to keep that anger within the bounds of ethics and the law, of course. But the fact that you've made it this far means you're interested in what really happened. You're a seeker of truth. You're looking for actual facts and not just rhetoric presented by some lawyer in a lawsuit. That's the fun thing online, right? To get all indignant about those people who did that thing that was wrong and how dare they. But there's 2 sides to every story, right? At least 2 sides. If you're an investigator, you know that. And it's a very good indicator of who you are and the type of person you are that you've listened this long. I mean, do you really think the police just went to an address that's 5 years out of date? I know the police and I know bad guys. Let's think about it for a minute. The way the family tells the story, it seems like they don't even know the suspect. It seems like he was a tenant who moved out long before they moved in. But what if? What if the man the police were trying to arrest was the father of the birthday child? And what if he recently listed that address as his residence when he renewed his driver's license? What if he actually, quote unquote, stays there on weekends sometimes, but the family doesn't really consider him to, quote, live there? The reality is, while the police maybe should have verified that he was in the house before the raid, I suspect they had valid reasons to believe this is a good address. This could easily be a case of the suspect putting his family at risk so he can avoid arrest. It happens all the time. If this is true, does it change the way you feel about what the police did? Let me know. I just think it's only fair to have kind of a balanced second perspective on this, especially, like I say, when the police department is not going to make public comments because it's just their policy not to comment on pending litigation. For the third and final time on this video, I'm going to wrap it up. This is Larry Kaye with ShadowAnyone.com. Remember, do the right thing, even if it's the hard thing.